U.S. star Simone Biles has withdrawn from another competition in Tokyo to focus on her mental health. Biles stumbled yesterday on vault and removed herself from the team final, saying she didn't feel mentally ready to continue. So everyone is talking about this. What do you guys think? Will this help normalize mental health conversations in sport? And can we also just talk about Simone Biles?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about this mental health conversation, so clearly it's already having an impact. Everybody, as you mentioned, Jess, is talking about it, including many of our viewers. Joanne on Facebook shared with us that, quote, time and time again, she demonstrates why she is the GOAT. She performs gymnastic feats no woman ever has, and now she's showing young girls and athletes everywhere that her mental health is more important than the next gold medal. She did the next best thing for her team, herself, and the world watching. I could not love her more. Thank you so much, Joanne, and I think you're summing up what a lot of people are feeling today about Simone.
And I have to say, I love that Joanne referenced the team because, yes, Simone chose herself, but she also chose to trust and place so much trust in her teammates. In the press conference, she said she was worried that they had all worked so hard, and if she didn't step down, she might cost them a spot on the podium. And just those teammates, you guys, the three of them, it's their first time Olympians. Can you imagine the anxiety and the stress that they must have been under to step up in that moment while Simone was cheering them on in the sidelines? Like Sunita Lee on those uneven bars. Did you see that performance? And then Simone's best friend, Jordan Childs, on the bars and the beam. It's just incredible.
But you know what, Jess? There's another layer to Simone showing up at that press conference and on the sidelines. Of course, she was supporting her teammates, but she had just made a decision for her about mental health, and there was no shame. And how do you reflect no shame? You show up in other ways. She didn't withdraw entirely from the competition. Just like if there was a physical injury, someone, hurts their ankle or pulls a shoulder, you might see a basketball player or a volleyball player still on the sidelines with a cast or a sling. She also did the same. And I think that's an added layer of importance for mental health normalization, where she's like, I have a mental injury, but I'm not going to be ashamed of what it is because it's just like a physical injury, and I'm going to show my face. Not everyone has to do it that way. I'm not saying that. But her doing that, being the #1 in the world, carries so much weight.
It shows what a great athlete she is, too, because when you play team sport, what you do on the bench is as important as what you do out on the court. And I am so happy and so supportive of her making this decision. In her sport, particularly gymnastics, there has been a long history of nightmarish mental health issues. Remember in the 1976 games, oh my goodness, Nadia Comaneci became everybody's darling. She scored the first perfect tens. Every girl that got a jewelry box that year for Christmas, it was Nadia's theme playing inside it. Then 2 years later, a young Soviet came up, Elena Mukina, and she was supposed to beat out Nadia at the 1980 Olympics. She ended up breaking her leg 2 years before. They took that cast off before she was healed. And then she was arguing against doing rollouts, which are now banned in gymnastics because of her. And she kept saying, I am going to hurt myself. And because she was mentally and physically not up to snuff, in practice 2 weeks before the Olympics, she under-rotated, landed on her chin, and was completely paralyzed from the neck down. And the sad part is, she said in an interview, as soon as her neck broke and she knew it was catastrophic, her first thought was, thank God I don't have to go to the Olympics. So this is not golf, right? If your mind's not in it, it can be a life-changing, life-ending accident. So good for you, Simone. You gave us everything you need to. You don't need to give us anything else. So good for her.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of commentators were saying for the one vault that she did, that a lot of people said that she, in fact, said she lost her way in midair when she was doing her rotations. And the commentators were like, that could have been really, really, really awful. It was a dangerous situation. And she said herself she'd rather walk out of there than leave on a stretcher. And I think that you're right, Candy. That's the biggest difference, is there's a physical component to this if you are mentally not in the game. And let's just go back a year. A lot has happened. We had the Olympics postponed for 1 year, and Simone said that extra year is a real mental toll on an athlete who says, holy cow, not only do I have to wait a year, but I have to keep myself conditioned. I have to keep competing. So mentally now she's in a different place because she was prepared to compete at the Olympics last year. They pushed it out a year plus. In that time, we had all of the racial reckoning, catapulted onto the world stage after the death of George Floyd. And if you talk about where racism fits in this, and I'll bring in, a fellow athlete, Naomi Osaka, there's the added layer for these young women of color, specifically Black women, that it's not just world pressure of expectation to perform and be perfect. Let's add the layers of racism on top of this. And so there's been a lot on her mind in so many ways outside of this. And for anybody who's watched Naomi's latest documentary on Netflix, the one thing that really surprised me when she's talking about her mental health is the stuff in life that's most important is bigger than my sport. She's like, I actually want to be known for things that are bigger than tennis. And Simone is echoing a lot of that same sentiment, which is my life is bigger than gymnastics. It's just a sport, which is hard for us fans to hear because we're like, no, just keep flipping. But I get it because life is so much bigger than just this moment, even though, as Simone said, it's the Olympics.
But it also
And when you
now,
think
given
about-
the decision she made, it's also now given the decision she made, Mel, about legacy. Is legacy going to be all her gold medals and the vaults that she has completed and what she's done for the sport? Or is her legacy going to be the athlete who was at the top of the game when she took a stance on mental health? So often we hear about athletes who struggle with mental health afterwards. They, quote, push through. That would be Michael Phelps. Exactly. And that documentary, the HBO documentary, Weight of Gold, that's when he talks about how much he was struggling and he pushed through and what the detrimental effect that pushing through had on his life. He was interviewed yesterday asked to give comment on Simone Biles' situation. Obviously, he greatly admires her. And here's the greatest swimmer of all time describing his Olympic experience as, quote, heartbreaking. He has all these medals and he calls it heartbreaking because he's looking back on his mental health and his memories, and it wasn't fun for him. The gold medals don't matter when there's that much suffering. So when Simone does it at the top of her game with this kind of spotlight, she's leaving a legacy for other athletes and society to talk about mental health and be more kind about mental health in a way that will last more and mean more than world records and medals.
Lainey, a New Yorker writer.
Sorry?
I just wanted to
just
say
that
a New Yorker writer, Lainey, just echoed exactly what you said, this idea. She's predicting that this moment has the potential to affect the next generation of gymnasts more than any medal could.
And since those last Olympics, everything has become very public about the Larry Nassar thing, the doctor who sexually abused so many of those gymnasts. All those other gymnasts are retired, so they're dealing with their trauma in private. Simone is here on the world stage, and she still hasn't finished processing that. She said in a recent interview that Larry took something from her that she will never, ever get back. So she's dealing with all of that, too. So we really need to give her kudos for even trying to come to these Olympics.
I'm glad you brought that up because there's still a lot of fights between the gymnasts and USA Gymnastics for which she is still competing with. So that's really, really interesting. And for the first time ever, USA Olympic Committee and Paralympic Committee has also shipped over a team of mental health professionals to accompany all the athletes. It's the first time ever. So you have a lot of athletes along the way to thank for that.